All right, guys, we are back with another episode of Post Grad with Asha NCE edition. So I am so sorry it took me so long to record this section of the NCE sample questions. I will say I tried to record this video like 3 or 4 times. The first time I got interrupted at work at the office, right? And then the second time I recorded it and it got lost in downloads. So here I am a third time, so I'm going to take it as the third time is a charm. So section 3 of the NCE talks about areas of clinical focus. And before we jump into that, again, my name is Asha Creary. I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Texas and an approved licensed professional counselor in the state of Missouri, counselor supervisor in the state of Missouri. I'm an educator, mentor, and I am a clinic director of a small private practice in Central Texas called Crave Counseling. So I am not going to get into all of this information, but I want you guys to think about application. Any theory, model, modality that you can think of, your job is to be able to know how to apply it to any of these situations and any of these scenarios. Application. How do I apply CBT to fear and panic? How do I apply EMDR to trauma? How do I apply these things? So again, I'm not going to get into that. This is one of your largest sections on the examination. This section is worth 29% of the test. It is 47 scored items on the test. So let's jump into these questions. I want to make sure I try to keep these videos shorter than longer, just because I know everyone's attention span is a thing. All right. So what are Freud's psychosexual stages? So I'm going to give you about 10 seconds to answer this, and then we're going to break down the answer. All right, it's A. So if you look at the other answer choices and you break them down, answer choice C has libido listed in it. Libido has nothing to do with Freud's psychosexual stages. Libido is a person's sex drive. Now, when you think Freud, you always think sex, yes, but at the same time, this particular question, we're talking about psychosexual stages, not necessarily your sex drive. D is not the answer because it talks about the pleasure principle or pleasure. Pleasure shows up when you are talking about the id, the ego, superego. Pleasure shows up in id. All right. Then the last one, it only has 4 listed stages. And we know Freud has 5 psychosexual stages. So that one can easily be kicked out as well. All right, when working with the aging population, it is important to remember they are the fastest growing segment in society and they typically deal with polypharmacy. So I'll give you about 7 seconds to answer this. All right, the answer is true. If you think about the aging population within your family, what are they dealing with right now? They are dealing with multiple prescriptions. They are the fastest growing society or population, my apologies, according to research. So, you know, both parts of that is true. So the entire answer is true. All right. What age does guilt versus initiative cover? I'll give you 10 seconds. And for this one, you're going to be thinking about Erikson's 8 stages. Yeah, Erikson's 8 stages of psychosocial development. All right, the answer is play. So if we think about life in general, early adulthood, you are establishing relationships, you are determining, identifying whether you want to isolate from people, family, friends, or again, you're jumping into the intimacy space of life. So we know it's not early adulthood. School age between 7 and 11 is industry versus inferiority. And then adolescence between the ages of 12 and 18 is identity versus confusion. So again, if you think about life and how it shows up, adolescents between the ages of 12 and 18, they are typically dealing with their identity and they're confused about who they should be, how they should show up in the world. And then those school age kids are really focused on competence. Like, do I really understand what I'm learning? That type of thing. So The only one that makes the most sense is 3 to 6 year olds. And if you think about engaging with 3 and 6 year old family members, sometimes they are experiencing, I want to take initiative, but then when I make a mistake, I feel guilty. So I'm going to go hide in a corner, or I'm going to apologize a lot. That's usually what you see in that age range. All right. What guides the ego? I'll give you 10 seconds on this. All right. The reality principle drives the ego. So if you think about the remaining ones, the pleasure principle or the id is driven by the pleasure principle. Superego is driven by the morality principle. And if you look at the answer choices, pleasure principle is not right because it goes with id. We don't see one in relation to the superego. And then parental and societal values, not so much. And it doesn't have principle in it. So we're thinking about that. So there's 3 types of principles. There's reality, pleasure, and morality. When it comes to talking about the id, the ego, and superego, ego is reality. What's real? What's happening? How is this stroking your ego in real time? The id, pleasure. What makes me feel good? What feels good? And then superego, what's right versus wrong? All right, moral development theory was developed by who? I'll give you 10 seconds. All right, it's Kohlberg. So if we think about these particular answer choices, Freud was psychosexual. Now, he did talk about morality principle when it came to the id, the ego, and the superego, but he was known for psychosexual development. Piaget was known for cognitive development theories. Gilligan was known for moral development, but moral development in regards to girls and women. Kohlberg was general moral development. So that is our answer. The overall end goal of Maslow's hierarchy of needs reiterates which need to be the most important need. I'll give you 10 seconds. Alrighty, it's psychological. So if we think about the breakdown of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the bottom 2, there is a diagram that's out there that breaks down Maslow's hierarchy of needs into 3 subcategories, I believe. And so the bottom 2, which is usually your physiological needs, and then there is the middle 2, which are your psychological needs, and then I think the very top is just self-actualization. So if we think about that in general, yes, safety is important and it falls underneath the physiological needs. But if you think about it, it ultimately impacts psyche, right? If I don't have food, if I don't have shelter, if I don't feel emotionally safe, how can I operate in this world sane or mentally sound, right? So when you think about it, psychology or the psychological needs of a person is the biggest, most important need. Now, yes, again, you do need food, but when you don't have food, you go into survival mode, you start stealing, or your mental is tainted. So I'm gonna just put that out there like that. But then also, if you think about psychological in itself, belongingness and esteem truly fall underneath that subsection when you look at the hierarchy of needs. And then safety again falls under physiological needs. All right. Piaget was known for his interest in what? All right. He was known for cognitive development. So social was Vygotsky. I always say his name wrong, so y'all, I apologize for that in advance. Moral is Kohlberg, and then physical, we're talking about psychology. I don't know that there were any physical developmental theories out there that we had to learn in graduate school. Now, did we have to learn the development of the brain? Yes, but it was in relation to how the brain impacts behaviors, not necessarily the overall physical aspects of it. And then when we talk about physical development and different things like that, that's more of biology, that's more of medicine, that's more of maybe nursing, those types of things. Now, psychobiology is a thing, but it had nothing to necessarily do with the physical development of a client. But again, if we think about Piaget, we know physical development. He didn't talk about that. We're talking about psychology. He's one of the founding fathers. So I digress. All right. The theory of moral development applicable to women was developed by who? All right. It's Gilligan. So if we think about what we've learned in overall moral development theories, you heard me answer this in a previous question where Gilligan was specific to women. Kohlberg was general moral development. Jahoda was a leading person or developed positive psychology. And Moss may have been a name you never really just heard like that. It's just no. Like if you had never known anything about Moss, you just wouldn't pick it because it's not a name that you've really heard in your studies, whether it was in graduate school or undergraduate school, or even in your initial trainings and how you conceptualize cases when you're presenting them in consultation. All right. A client is more likely to imitate behaviors of a model person when the client all right. A, identifies with the model. Now, if we think about identifies with the model, kids typically model people that they can identify with. How do we relate? What are some connections? How are we connected? How are we different? How are we the same? How can I see myself in you? Right? So if we look at the other answer choices, is someone of the same race? That's a way of identifying somebody, but that wouldn't be the only person in which you follow someone. If we think about politics, not all skin folk is kinfolk, right? So we're not necessarily imitating people that look like us per se. Now we do imitate people who we identify with, right? Has above average intelligence. Listen, intelligence have nothing to do with modeling someone, because those who have lower IQs or who have learning disabilities, they tend to model people who don't have them. So that doesn't necessarily mean anything. They tend to model them because they identify with them in some way, shape, or form. There's a typo here, and I said this in the last video that was not successful. I forgot to change it. But for the sake of it, has equal life circumstances or have equal life circumstances. That's a no. Think about it. I'm not a millionaire, right? So if I meet somebody that's a millionaire, I don't identify with them and we don't have equal circumstances. So I probably am not behaving the same way that they are because we don't have, they got $1 million pockets and I don't. I can't go on a trip every week. Now, can I identify with someone who is a millionaire? Yes. It is not because we have equal circumstances. That's all I'm trying to say. All right. So in working with a client, the counselor quickly realizes that the client is in the multiplicity stage of Perry's cognitive development theory. This tells the therapist that the client views what? All right. The answer choice is A. So if we think about Perry's cognitive or intellectual development stage or cognitive development stage, you will want to think dualism, multiplicity, contextual relativism, and contextually appropriate. So it goes from dualism to multiplicity to contextual relativism, and then it goes to contextually appropriate. So dualism to multiplicity, there's a transition between, or the transition is uncertainty, ambiguity. And so when you're talking about what multiplicity means, it really means that everyone has an opinion and no opinion is equal. So there's no wrong answer. There's no right answer. I don't feel no ways. It's whatever. Everybody has an opinion and it is what it is. There's no certainty in anything. All right. Adler's primary focus was on what? Social urges. So classical conditioning was Pavlov. The ego, Freud. Cognitions, Piaget. Either you know it or you don't. So this is one of those things where you really got to identify which founding father developed which theory, and knowing it, it's a fact-based question. There's no application here. Either you know it or you don't. A group of people living together with patterns of interdependent behaviors is called. All right, it's culture. So if you think about class, usually it's like, let's say financial class. We're not interdependent. We just have the same type of income. We have the similar lifestyles, but we're not interdependent upon each other. When you think about a clan, it usually has a negative connotation. This particular question or statement wasn't a negative connotation. And then when you think about cliques, they are dependent. There's no interdependent. They're 100% dependent upon each other in the establishment of this clique. And then culture, we're interdependent. That doesn't mean that we 100% solely rely on each other. It means that we move within the norms of our culture, of our community, of our level of engagement, and how we see each other within this group of people. Okay, the stage in life in which a client is seeking to establish themselves and form relationships is called. Before you answer this question, try to visualize what these words actually mean before you answer it. So I'm going to give you 10 seconds to think about this one. All right, it's early adulthood. Think about it. In your 20s, what were you doing? You were trying to establish yourself, trying to find a career, trying to save money, trying to do this. That's what you were doing. In your midlife, if you're in your 30s like I am, you start to become more settled. You know who you are. You know where you want to be. You're not rushing to get anywhere. You're not slowing down. You're settling. You're finding your community. You're purchasing homes. You're settled in your career. Whatever that looks like for you, this is where you are in your midlife. So midlife equals settling down. That's what that is. All right. And then culmination, that usually happens right before the last adulthood transition, right before. All right. And if you don't know what this question is coming from, you want to look up Levinson's Seasons of Life. That is where this information is coming from. All right. Which of the following is not a part of Bandura's social cognitive theory? And I'm sorry, y'all. These yawns are coming from nowhere, out of nowhere. It's 8:35 a.m. Today, so I'm not sure where they're coming from. But without further ado, the correct answer is financial. If you think about social cognitive, what does money have anything to do with anything? Absolutely nothing when it comes to social cognitive theory. Personal, behavior, environmental, those are the things that impact someone's social cognitive development. Gestalt was influenced by which of the following when he was developing his theories in the world of psychology? All right. It ain't psychobiology. Psychobiology is the study of genetics and its influence on behavior and cognition. And it was a later development. Cognitive behavioral therapy and RBT falls under cognitive behavioral therapy. Remember, cognitive behavioral therapy was Piaget. And this thought did not follow behind Piaget. He wasn't studying with him. He wasn't following him. None of the things in between. So for this one, the only one that makes the most sense is industrial and organizational psychology. Whether you knew this or not, we know we can cross off C and B and C because CBT is its own cognitive, it is its own theory. And we know Gestalt didn't have nothing to do with CBT, the CBT world, any of it. And again, psychobiology is a newer theory, and it's psychobiology. He talked nothing about biology at all. So just putting that out there. All right. the person in the family that the other family feels needs the most help, and is usually the family member in treatment. So I want y'all to think about that model that has all of the dysfunctional family roles in it. Think about that as you're answering this question. I'll give you 10 seconds. All right, it's the scapegoat. So if you think about it, the family hero is not the one in therapy. They might be, right? They might be, but they are not the one that needs help. They are the one constantly taking care of other people, constantly saving family members, constantly the person who is saving and getting it all together for everybody. Then you have the lost child. This is the quiet child, the timid child. This is a child that don't cause any problems, often forgotten, which is why they're called the forgotten child. The rescuer is not even underneath the dysfunctional family roles. It's not a dysfunctional family role. I don't believe it is something that we've learned. If you think about that diagram, that's not listed. And then there's the scapegoat. The scapegoat is usually the black sheep. They are usually the problem child. They are the one keeping up the most ruckus. The family is like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with this family member? Because they need so much help. They need around the clock case management. They need an entire team just for themselves. And then there's other family member roles, which is the victim, the mascot, and the enabler. The victim is the person that's usually chemically dependent based on that diagram. And then the mascot is the family clown, the person that keeps everybody laughing, keeping everybody in high spirits. And then the enabler is the protector. That is the person that's trying to make sure that these people don't fall flat on their face. So either you know this information or you don't. Spitting in the client's soup does which of the following? All right, all of the above. So when you think about what spitting in a client's soup is, it is you making comments about the undesirable behavior. Okay, you're basically, I mean, it's kind of like throwing shade. If you think about what it looks like, what it sounds like, it's almost like throwing shade. Like, oh, you did what? I don't know if that was a smart idea. Of course, you wouldn't be doing that in therapy, but it's like throwing shade. Like, okay, I see you, and then the client's like, actually, no, that's not appropriate. That was very counterproductive to what I was trying to do. And it can only be done when you have a healthy and a safe relationship with your client. You cannot spit in a client's soup with a very new client. Now, unless you establish that level of safety that fast in the first session, yes, but you're not spitting in the client's soup session 1. You might be spitting in the client's soup section 6, section 10, section 18, because the math just ain't mathing, right? All right, taking a toy away from a 7-year-old due to not doing their homework would be an example of what, based on Skinner's idea of punishment. All right, positive punishment. So if we think about the answer choices, we know it's 1 or 2 of the punishments, okay? So we know we can leave those there for the sake of crossing stuff out. Reinforcement is what? It reinforces or promotes the behavior. It tells you, oh, it's okay to do this. Keep doing it. We know it's not none of the above. All right. So if we think about the difference between positive punishment and negative punishment. So positive punishment is adding an aversive stimulus, which means I'm going to take something away from you that is going to cause an adverse reaction in you, whether it's temper tantrums, whether it's whatever. But it's also going to force you or reduce the behavior, meaning you need to go do your homework. And this is an everyday thing. So I'm going to keep taking this until you understand that you need to do your homework. Now, with negative punishment, it removes the reinforcing stimulus. So if I were to allow this child to just keep their toy, they would never do their homework because I'm telling them that it's okay to not do your homework. It reinforces not doing the homework, okay? De-individuation is when a person loses their individuality and accept and operate within social norms. It is said that this happens because of what? All right. De-individuation happens because of anonymity and disseminated responsibility, not fear. Now, can fear, depending on where you are assimilating to, right? Can fear force you to become de-individualized? Yes. But for the sake of what we're talking about, such as losing individuality and operating within social norms, fear will cause you to put a mask over your head. You're going to operate in societal norms, but then when you get home, you're going to take that mask off. But when you're talking about what it's saying, I've accepted these norms and I'm going to operate within them. I'm okay and content with these norms. And I'm not going to change who I am when I come home because I'm cool with this. So anonymity is the lack of individualization or individuality. I am not going to be individual within this social construct. Disseminating responsibility means disseminate. It means to give something out. It means to spread. So it means to share responsibility. I'm going to share responsibility within this social construct, within this social community, and these social norms. All right, theraplay was established in the 1970s as a way to help a child express themselves through play in therapy, in the therapy space. It was developed by which of the following? So we'll pause here. All right, Anne Jernberg. So if we think about time span, right? Anna Freud was early on in the play therapy space. Virginia Axline, early on in the play therapy space. Carl Rogers, he was not necessarily a developer per se, but him and Virginia Axline worked closely together in the same time span. And they did develop child-centered and person-centered together. They co-developed it, or they co-collaborated on the theory of it. So if we think about it, Carl Rogers and Virginia Axline would have been around the same time frame, not in the 70s, but more so in the 50s and mid to late 60s. I think they developed child-centered play therapy or person-centered play therapy in the 1950s. Okay. And then we got Anna Freud. Again, she was early on, which means it would not have been in the 70s. And if you think about how old Freud is himself, she died in 82. Not to say that she would not have still been functioning in the 70s as a contributing member in the psychological space, but she was practicing in her younger age. So, again, she was early on, and theraplay is later. So just keep that in mind. And if you did not have a program that focused on play therapy or really emphasized a course or anything like that, you might want to take like a CE, an online CE course that talks about the history of play therapy. All right. According to logotherapy, established by Viktor Frankl, individuals are motivated by which desires in life? All right, it's going to be meaning. Money. We know that's out. Already off the rip. Throw it out. Career. Maybe, but our career doesn't necessarily fulfill us. Our meaning, how we serve people, why we're here, our purpose does fulfill the desires of our life. So career is just what you do. Now, if you connect your meaning and your purpose and all the things to it, then maybe, but it's not the most wholesome answer choice. Relationships, I mean, we all want them, but they don't necessarily give us meaning. Now relationship with your kids, maybe how you serve your family, maybe, but not in regard to your life desires. All right, the miracle question is used in which of the following theoretical psychotherapy techniques? All right, solution focused. We know it's not Gestalt. We know it's not CBT, and we know it's not person-centered. So if you think about the miracle question, it is What is life like, or what would the world look like if there were no problems and all issues were taken care of? That's talking about the solutions to every single issue that's causing a client to be in therapy or that's causing a client to be dysregulated. All right, which theoretical modality would be best for alcohol cessation? All right, CBT. So if you think about these particular answer choices, EMDR should be known for trauma, PTSD, combat, car accidents, sexual assault, the things. Solution-focused therapy is more so going to be around problem-oriented. What problem do you have and what do you want to solve it? It's quick, straight to the point. Alcohol cessation is not quick, straight to the point. Behavior modification would probably be more so those who struggle with impulse control, those who struggle with anger management, those who struggle with really more so those two things. Behavior modification, we're going to modify your response to your anger. It's okay to get anger, but let's modify how you respond to it and how you maneuver the world once you become angry. I'm not trying to change your thought pattern. I'm not trying to change who you are. I'm not trying to find your cognitions. I am just trying to say, what can we do to change your behaviors when this stimulus occurs? And then cognitive behavioral is wholesome. What are the thoughts that's causing you to lead to alcohol misuse? Is it depression? Is it self-defeating thoughts? Is it fear? Is it what's leading you here? And then when you have those triggers, what behaviors do you engage in? Alcohol use. All right. So then now how can we change the two? How can we come to some more positive thoughts? How can we engage in some more positive coping mechanisms? That's what you're going to see with CBT. All right. Which of the following is not one of the 7 categories identified by Lazarus? All right. So we know we can cross out B and C. Those make sense. Or even if they didn't make sense, 2 of the answer choices look alike. So we know one of them is true and the other one is false. Affect. These 3 answer choices, A, B, and C, they go together. Affect, cause and effect. Not here. So if you don't know about Lazarus's 7 categories, it includes behavior, affect, sensation, imagery, cognition, interpersonal relationships, and drug and biological considerations. All right, let's get into this next question. Which of the following is not one of the categories of psychotherapeutic alliance? All right, romance. Even if you didn't know how to answer this question, psychotherapeutic alliance. Alliance means positive. It means healthy. It means safe. Psychotherapeutic, psychological, or you know what I'm trying to say. Psychotherapeutic is therapeutic. It's healthy. It's safe. It's productive. It's conducive. It's helpful. It's warm. It's kind. It's the things. And in order for you to develop a psychotherapeutic relationship, you have to have interpersonal relationships with this person. You have to be able to have a reparative relationship if you cause harm or if there's some tension or some friction happening within the session. And person to person. Do I understand you? Do I see you? Do I respect you? Do I accept you? Do I do all the things? And romance, think about ethics. Just think about ethics. It's a no. You would not have a romantic relationship with the client. So we know it's an automatic no. All right. Which of the following is an example of cognitive distortion overgeneralization? Overgeneralization. All right. Telling myself I will never get a job because I was turned down for one position. woe is me. Life happens to me. I'll never, things will never be good for me. That kind of stuff. So only accepting positive things is a way of protecting your peace. It has nothing to do with overgeneralization. Telling everyone else they will never do great because you didn't, that is not overgeneralization. That is just straight hating. Or jealousy or whatever. It's not overgeneralization. And then telling people that they're always right. I don't know if that's sarcasm, if that's hate, if it's jealousy, or if it's just misinterpretation of information, but it's not overgeneralization. Again, overgeneralization is more so along the lines of it's negative in its connotation, typically, and it happens to me. All right. So the next one is, I'm going to tell you now, I'm messing up on this word. Okay. Which of the following is an example of the cognitive distortion catastrophizing? Okay. I'll give you 10 seconds on that. All right. I accidentally stole a piece of gum. And I keep thinking the police will pull me over and I'm going to go to jail. So when you think about catastrophizing, you're going to think about spiraling. I'm spiraling and I can't stop. I did this one thing. This is going to happen. 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 Just think about that. I can break into any car that I want to and they'll never catch me. That's ego. That's ego. It has nothing to do with catastrophizing. And again, catastrophizing is negative outcome. All right. Avoiding difficult conversations with the fear of being unheard. No, that's avoidance. The basic definition of avoidance. And then the last one is remind myself of all the bad things I've done in the past. No, that's anxiety or depression, recurrent intrusive thoughts. That's not necessarily cognitive, the cognitive distortion of catastrophizing. All right. So that's it for our 20 questions in regard to Unit 3 of the NCE. And yeah, so please feel free to like, share, subscribe, share it with a friend, send it to your professor, drop it in a group chat for people who are studying for the NCE. And also make note that I just released a NCE study course. For those of you who guys need more one-on-one, it has a live time with me. It also has additional breakdowns, mnemonics, how to remember things, different things like that. So I'm gonna just put that out there. And then there's also going to be, what else is in that course? It's going to get into, it's pretty much going to break down all the information you would need to remember and know. And then also some test taking skills and different things like that. So without further ado, that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching it. And I look forward to seeing you as I break down the NCE section number 4. Hopefully that video doesn't take me that long to put out there, but I'm going to just apologize in advance if it does. So thank you guys. See you next time.